caught ogling her like some fucking Mike Newton, and leaned back leisurely against the booth seat, satisfied she was comfortable enough to remove the jacket finally. She smiled at me and began glancing over the menu, pursing her lips and furrowing her little brow again. Her hair was shiny today, though not as curly, and equally as adorable. I leaned into her a little bit to smell her hair involuntarily. I stiffened when I realized what I was doing, and rested back into the back of the seat. I chanced a sideways glance at her and she was smiling widely, still staring at the menu. She fucking saw that shit. I smirked and scooted closer to her, deciding that the smile meant she didn't give a shit whether or not I smelled her hair. So I did. I plunged my nose into the side of her head and took a deep breath. She chuckled a little, so I figured I wasn't being inappropriate. I smiled into all her hair and lifted my arm to rest on the back of the booth behind her. I ran my fingers through all her shiny locks while we looked at the menu together. It all felt so fucking normal and comfortable. There were brief moments of awkwardness at the beginning, but we shook that shit off. It felt more like a definite date and a quasi-non-date. We were masters of simplicity, choosing the pepperoni and cheese pizza. A pimply-faced kid a little younger than us walked up to take our order. Unfortunately, while he was doing it, he eyed my girl's chest a beat longer than I was entirely fucking comfortable with, ogling the same collarbones that I had been dying to lick all day. And I could feel her tension from his stare emanating off of her in waves as she cringed into my side. I sent him a glare when I ordered, and a very pointed look that every male knows to mean back the fuck off. After Pimply Face walked away nervous and stammering, my girl leaned back comfortably into my shoulder. While I had my arm around her and smiled up at me, I sent her a crooked smile back, watching as her eyes widened a bit and her face got a little red. I snickered at her and hugged her to me tighter for a second before I went back to fingering her silky hair. When Pimply Face returned with our drinks, he kept his eyes on the fucking floor. I smirked at him when he met my gaze again, as he walked away. Now, normally I have a very strict policy against fucking with people in the food service industry. It's never a wise move to piss someone off who prepares your food. But my girl and I were sharing the pizza, so I knew I was safe this time. It was assholes like him that made my girl feel the need to wear that goddamn hoodie all the time. And really, she was much too fucking beautiful to hide behind it. I made a mess with all my pizza and Bella snickered at me while wiping the melted cheese off my leather jacket with a napkin. I just fucking shrugged. Something about tomato sauce and melted cheese just made me messy. We sat for a while after we ate, just fucking enjoying the comfortable position with her head on my shoulder, and my arm around her while I played with her hair. She was smiling and telling me about all the decorating horror stories of Casa de Brandon. I snicker every now and then at Brandon's torture tactics and occasionally lean into my girl's hair to smell it some more. I decided when it began getting dark outside the restaurant windows it was probably a good time to leave, so I paid the pimply face motherfucker and left him a very condescending tip with a smirk. Bella looked at odds with the idea of putting the uncomfortable jacket back on, wanting to cover herself but not liking the way it felt or some shit. I decided for her, scooping it up and draping it over my arm, while I led her out of the restaurant with my arm around her shoulders. I did the door thing again, which made her smile once more. Once I got in the car, I drove away and towards Forks feeling really fucking victorious. The day went far better than I had expected, and one glance towards my girl's face, occasionally lit up from the headlights of oncoming traffic, told me she really enjoyed the shit out of it too. I drove with one hand, lounging a bit with my arm resting on the console between us halfway to Forks. I felt a little hand slide into mine on the console and intertwine with my fingers. I smiled at the road ahead of me and wrapped my fingers around her little knuckles. We can totally handle this shit. We spent the drive in silence, both leaning back against the seats comfortably with small smiles on our faces, while I rubbed the back of her little hand with my thumb. When we finally reached our road, I decided I definitely did not like the idea of my girl walking to her house in the dark, so I decided to chance it and just park at home and let her stalk over across the yards. She quirked an eyebrow at me when I pulled up, and I just fucking shrugged. I parked in the garage behind the house, which I don't usually do, but it would give her some cover for the whole stalking bit. I had to release her hand to put the car in park and turn the ignition off, but I left the keys in so I could have a little light from the dashboard. I shifted my gaze to the middle console, where Bella's little hand was still resting, and I slowly slid mine back into hers, intertwining our fingers and staring at them thoughtfully while I rubbed her hand with my thumb some more.
Thanks for bringing me, I had a lot of fun,
Bella said, quietly from her seat. I looked up at her and she was staring at our intertwined hands on the console with a small smile. She glanced up at me from under her lashes a bit and kind of made my fucking breath hitch. I smiled back at her and squeezed her hand a bit, kind of unsure what to do next, and reluctant to leave. Which was pretty fucking ridiculous seeing as how she'd be climbing up to my balcony in only 4 hours. Deciding I wanted to stay on track with the whole idea of doing shit normally, I figured I should give her a good night kiss. Guys did that kind of shit all the time, right? I looked into her big brown eyes and licked my lips by instinct. When she saw the movement, she darted her eyes towards them momentarily. I figured it was a pretty good giveaway of what I was going to do, and she didn't seem to be protesting, so I shifted my body towards hers and lifted my free hand from the steering wheel. She got the point rather quickly, and shifted her body towards me, licking her lips lazily in anticipation. I used my free hand to brush all her shiny hair away from her face, before I wrapped my hand around her head, and brought her face closer to mine. Her eyes fluttered closed, as we leaned in towards each other over our intertwined hands on the console between us. When her lips met mine, she took my top lip. I'm pretty fucking sure she knows how much I love her bottom lip by now. I took it in between my lips, sucking on it gently while she ran her free hand up my neck and tangled it in my hair. She pulled away slightly and moved to my bottom lip while I pulled her face closer. We must have been in sync or some shit, because we both darted our tongues out at exactly the same time. Her tongue tasted so fucking good and warm against mine. I moaned a little when she licked me. When she heard it, she pulled my face closer, tilting her head so she could push her tongue inside my mouth. I was pressing against her tongue softly at first, occasionally rubbing her head with my thumb. But all my hormones were getting the better of me as I unclasped my hand from hers on the console, and wrapped it around her little neck, pressing her closer, and forcing my tongue into her mouth. She moaned breathlessly before she brought her newly freed hand to fist in my leather jacket, and pulled me closer. I leaned in closer over the console, and pushed my tongue in farther, nearly panting into her mouth. She let go of my jacket and pushed it apart, rubbing her little hand up and down my chest slowly. I pulled away from her lips to catch my breath, but instead of letting me go, she dragged her teeth across my bottom lip and sucked it into her mouth. I groaned and gripped her shoulder. When she finally let my lip go, I opened my eyes, but I stayed leaned over the console, inches from her face, breathing heavily from the fucking fantastic kissing. Her eyes were hooded and dark with lust as she caught her breath and licked her lips, still rubbing up and down my chest. I slowly slid my hand from around her neck, never breaking her gaze, and trailed my fingers down across those fucking sexy collarbones from shoulder to shoulder. Her eyes fluttered closed again, so I took the opportunity. But I wanted to start somewhere a little less advanced, so I leaned into her neck, used my fingers to sweep all her shiny hair away, and began kissing it softly. She lolled her head back, fisting her hand into my hair, and pulling me closer. I darted my tongue out and licked right below her ear, eliciting a deep moan that turned my licking into sucking. Her moan grew louder as I trailed my tongue down her neck, stopping occasionally to suck and lick her warm skin. She fisted her hand into my t-shirt and twisted it, trying to bring my body closer over the obstacle of the console. I kept my mind on the prize, licking down slowly to her shoulder. She was panting and gripping my hair so fucking hard it almost hurt while she tried to pull my face closer to her. Finally, I reached the promised land of the fucking sexy collarbone. I lifted my lips from her skin and licked them in anticipation. Without any hesitation, and completely fucking overcome with lust, I quickly swept my tongue across the length of her collarbone, working from her shoulder to her throat. She moaned loudly into the silence of the car, gripping my hair even tighter. Once I reached her throat I groaned into it. Sexiest fucking collarbone ever.